Welcome back, everyone, to the Master Books Homeschool Summit. We are here today to discuss our high school session, which I'm very excited to discuss, especially with our guest, Kate Hannon, who is the author of Principle of Mathematics, Algebra 2, and our new Consumer Math. And we have the co-author and author of our language series, Sarah Gabel, with us. So thank you, ladies, for being here today. Looking forward to talking about high school and kind of calming the fears that some people have when transitioning into this stage. So welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start with Kate. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Well, I had the privilege of being homeschooled from first grade on up, and was in a Christian family. We looked for God in everything except for math. Math was like just this neutral subject. It was facts. You memorized them, you learned them, and that was that. And I would be wondering, like, why do we need to use this, especially as we got into high school? And my mom was just like, you just do, just learn it, right? And so I didn't have a choice but to be good at math. My mom was, my whole family was very good at math, but I didn't understand why I was learning high school math until as a senior, my mom had me read a book, and it totally transformed my view to realize, wait a minute, God is the author of math. He is the one holding all this together. All of it is shouting out his praises. And when you see math as part of his creation, then all of a sudden there's a purpose to the X's and Y's and A's and B's that pop up in your algebra book. And I was just awed and amazed at how all of it was proclaiming that we had a God we could trust. And I'm like, we missed this all those years. And so that started me on a journey of writing and speaking and trying to produce resources that would help other students not miss God's handiwork in math. So I've been doing that for over 20 years now, I think. And now I'm homeschooling my son, and very thankful for Master Books. We had used them early on when I was in school, and now using some with my son. So that's a little bit about me.
Sarah?
Yes, I was able to attend a Christian school most of my life, and graduated from there. Went on to college and got a bachelor's in English. I've always just loved writing, language, literature. And then when I started having my own kids, I decided I wanted to homeschool them. Randy and Kristen Pratt were a big influence on my life at that point. They were living here near me in New York, and I was working for their homeschool supply company, and they just had a big impact on steering me into homeschooling. So I then proceeded to have 4 more boys after my first son, and so I have homeschooled them all the way up through. And as I became aware of Master Books, I started to use it in our homeschool, and I've graduated the first 2. I'm graduating number 3 next year.
Awesome. So that's kind of me. I've graduated 2. I have 6. And so I graduated 2, and then I have 4 more at home, 2 are high schoolers. And it's actually my favorite stage. Outside of like 4th grade, high school is my favorite. Kate, do you have a favorite grade for math, or do you just love it all? Are you particular to the higher grades?
That's a tough question. I think I really loved writing the Principles of Mathematics, which is junior high, because it's an age where you have enough knowledge to really look at the big picture, and you have a chance to kind of see God's handiwork in a deeper way as like a broad spectrum of things. But going forward, I mean, it's hard to pick an actual grade.
And Sarah, what do you say would be the hardest and challenging moments of transitioning into high school, and then once you're in high school, especially having boys? I don't know if you feel the difference, but like there's like a weight, especially biblically, what we know when we have to launch a young man versus a young lady. So can you kind of talk a little bit about those challenges?
Yeah, I think the challenge, it's fun to pick the curriculum out, and now you're in high school, and you've got this thing called electives, right? And so this is not the time to quit homeschooling. This is what you've done all this work in the lower grades for, is to get to this point where now you can really steer the student toward what they are very interested in. And so I use all sorts of things for electives. that are going to help my student in the areas that they really are interested in and want to excel in. So that can be really fun. The challenge is, now you are upping the standards for an essay, right? You're upping the standards for the reading that they're doing, the level of reading they're doing. So you as a parent now have to figure out, like, how strict am I going to be when grading this essay? How much attention to detail am I going to pay when they're doing math problems, and I'm trying to make thing is neat and clean and tidy and their answer is readable and all of that. So that's definitely a bigger challenge, but yet it's so much fun because you're not having to be there holding their hand so much anymore. Masterbooks provides a curriculum where it's really student led, and they understand what's expected of them. Everything's laid out clearly. And so then they're coming to you either with, a project that you need to evaluate, an essay you need to look at, or a question that they might have. And so I think it has, at least with my boys, really been a point at which our relationship has become almost stronger, because now you're kind of like, you're helping them transition into adulthood. And it's fun to watch. So it's definitely not the time to say, I'm scared of this, I can't do this. It's time for you to go to public school or a private school. Like, no, this is what you've done all this work for. Hang in there and you will get through it. It can be a lot of fun.
Now, to change perception just a little bit, Kate, you were actually homeschooled and you went through it in high school. So how was it going through high school now that you're on this side of it and you're even like an author now for the high school level?
Well, I would just kind of echo what she said, like, don't give up in the high school. It was a beautiful time for our family. Growing up, those are some of my favorite years, because we really had the time at home to explore our interests, because we weren't like in school sitting with bookworks for 8 hours a day, right? So I was able to just practice writing because I was really interested in writing, and spend a lot more time on that than I ever would have been able to. Otherwise, my brother was into engineering. He was able to teach himself so much that he was hired as an electrician right out of high school. Or maybe it was during high school, and then he got hired as a computer something or other out of it. But my point is, he did a lot of stuff on his own. My mom is not good at computers at all, and she was scared to death to homeschool us because she didn't feel like she knew how to read well. I became an author. My brother is a computer engineer. Like, God works through our weaknesses, and he gave her Isaiah 54:13, all your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. And so I would just encourage moms, like, God makes a great teacher. He understands these high school concepts. Yes, I get that they can be overwhelming when you look at them, but he can help your children learn what they need to know. And he can pour out his joy and his wisdom in the midst of that. I know going into high school, those were years that I was really trying to make my faith my own. And I'm so glad that my mom didn't send me off to an environment that would have pulled me down in that, but instead I was surrounded by resources and truth that I needed to hear. So yeah, don't give up when it comes to high school.
Of our homeschool when we started years ago, because we've been homeschooling for 17 years, and that Isaiah 54:13 is like a bedrock for us on why we do what we do. And just knowing that if Christ is with us and we're teaching his word, then that's going to bear fruit one way or the other. Like, and I feel like the high school years, you've trained for so long, and now you start to see the fruit and some of that harvest of the seeds that you sowed. And it's like, why would you give up when the reward's coming? Like, I feel like high school is the best time, like you said, to make it their faith their own, and to have those worldview discussions, particularly in English, like, when we're reading literature and we're analyzing it and people's character, the state of man, and then you get to put in so much biblical worldview and apologetics with master books. And I love that that's even in math. And I'm so excited now that we have the consumer math coming out, because that is not just math. It's like a life skill and stewardship overall. And I love that the way you handle it in the course is very much a biblical base for stewardship, that God owns everything and we're just managers of what he's blessed us with. And he's really in control of, all of our lives, and we need to recognize that the way we handle money. And I love that you put it out there that money is kind of one of the most things that God talked about. It's Jesus talked about money and hell more than anything else, and it's great that you have the gospel woven into there, because these are things that I feel like when they launch out, what do we want them to know? And to know that God is faithful and consistent and sustains our universe, just like math is consistent, and it's a reflection of his character, is a beautiful thing. And then to have the gospel woven in, and why we use our money, and to be free to use our money in certain circumstances and ways, is just beautiful. And I love that life skill. Were you guys able to have that life skill prior to graduating too?
I would say that my parents had taught me some of those things, and then there's a lot more that I did a lot of research and looking into in preparation for writing the consumer math, and the Lord definitely used the process of writing it to grow me too, because there were things that I hadn't been taught, and I put things in there that I, after having bought a home and lived on my own for a while, like that I wished I had known earlier on. And I posted and got feedback from people about, like, what do you wish you had known before you graduated in terms of consumer math, and tried to make sure that this book addressed that. So it touches on some topics that a lot of consumer math books don't, just because I really want the student to have those skills that they would need to be a good steward with whatever God entrusts them. And yes, the focus, though, my heart in writing it was, I want students to steward well and to understand that biblical perspective. And so, yeah, it was wonderful for me to go back and really look at, what does the Bible say about this? Because there were things I had missed.
Right. And so do you think that there's a prerequisite to taking this course and kind of arming them in stewardship?
Yeah, I would say they need to finish a pre-algebra. So that would be Principles of Mathematics 2 in the Master Books program, or any pre-algebra course, because there is some just basic letters in there, but not heavy algebra. So you don't need to have done Algebra 1, but you can do it at any point in high school, depending on what you've already finished and where you're trying to go.
And could you give just some comparisons of other things that are out there for personal finance? What makes Master Books Consumer Math different?
I think the real emphasis on the worldview throughout is one very key thing. There's others that will talk about a worldview, but I try to include case studies. That's one aspect where they're actually getting to see examples of it lived out. They're getting real life problems, chances to apply it into their own life. It's a really nice full color. The graphic designers did an amazing job with it. On the inside, there's an e-course to go with it. So like, there's just a lot of different components to it that not all courses have.
And I do love that we'll be offering it on the Academy too. So the video courses are there, because sometimes just the visual learner and the auditory learner kind of does a lot better with the Master Books Academy. So I am thankful that you spent the time to do that too. So Sarah, how important is this life skill for you, especially having 5 boys? You launched them out. Would you recommend a consumer math practical life skill for students?
Well, I've been waiting for one to come out, and now it has. So I can't wait to get my hands on it. My oldest, the first son I graduated, there really wasn't anything. I tried a consumer math and we quit it halfway through the year because it was just too much. He was calculating stocks and bonds and it was very confusing, and we dropped it. So I'm excited that this product is out. I just need to convince my next son, who's graduating next year, that even though he doesn't need another math credit, he needs to take this. I'm excited that it's coming out. So my son had to just kind of learn on his own and have his parents teach him what we could. But I'm excited the next 4 kids will have this to use.
What other basic life skills do you think is important? Like, we're staying in this practical vein, that I feel like the high school years are the 4 years that feel like infant years. You're teaching them in such a short amount of time: driving, budgeting, how to interview, what's acceptable or not acceptable in the workplace, how to deal with certain, sensitive topics, our culture. So with so much going on in so many years to prepare them for life and for a career, what are some practical life skills, knowing that all the hormones are changing, there's the emotions, there's heavy decisions to be made. How do you navigate that with your teens? And just what are some practical life skills that you think it's important to focus on?
I can tell you one I didn't focus on. My first graduate moved out at 18 years old. He was hired by a Christian radio station about 2 hours away from us. And I apparently never told him to empty the lint trap on the dryer. So that was a life skill that he had to learn the hard way when he thought his dryer was broken and his clothes weren't getting dry. So I guess what I would say is we kind of, as parents, we know these life skills that we need to pass on, and we try and pass them on. It's hard to pass them on sometimes to a student who doesn't feel interested in learning about these things. They don't want to learn how to cook. They don't want to, right? But we're still trying to teach them these things. I think the important thing is to take the pressure off ourselves a little bit. One thing I've learned is that once we graduate them, we're still their parent. And we still have influence over them, and we're still teaching them and guiding them. And as they have that first job, and as they're in college, and as their car breaks down, and they need to get their own insurance, like, we're still there. So take the pressure off that they need to know everything they need to know to be an adult by the time they graduate. Life goes on after graduation, and learning continues after graduation, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. Me too. And I love that you brought up insurance, because that's also covered in our consumer math. So all the different types of insurance, it's really important, because I taught my daughter like as much as I could. And then she came to me one time and was like, all right, I'm ready for my car. I'm ready for this. And I thought, oh, wait, so it does happen even after graduation, we still can teach them, because she was like, why should I get this deductible versus that? And I'm like, oh, wait, I didn't really teach you that part yet. So like you, I'm thankful that my younger ones will be able to get that in consumer math. And other exciting news we have is that Language Lessons 11 will be ready for next fall, like this school year. So I know a lot of people kind of get paralyzed with the idea of math and English in the high school years. I don't know why that is, but I think that it's because a lot of it focuses on careers, college choices. So how do you think it's best to develop communication skills, and what does the Language Lesson series have to offer in comparisons to others? How do we prepare them with language and communicating well? That even goes down to something as basic as an interview.
Yeah, I think so. When it comes to communications for a high school student, it's so wrapped up in their personalities. Some kids are very detailed. They're going to notice what's wrong with what they wrote. They're going to notice when someone else uses the wrong verb tense. I have a son who will correct your grammar, right? And there are other students who they're not that detailed. They see the big picture. They don't notice those little errors. They don't matter to them. So knowing your child's personality, knowing their communication style, are they definitely more of a verbal communicator? Is that their comfort zone? Do they not really like to speak in front of a group? Do they prefer to text or email? Like, how do they communicate? And kind of working within that, but still challenging them on the areas of communication that they have a difficult time with. In all the language lessons for high school, I talk about active listening as being an important part of communication. So I give them exercises like interviewing, where they are having to really listen to what the person is saying, to the point where they can reiterate that to the person, and get confirmation. Because so many times our communication breaks down when we really weren't listening to what the person was telling us. So I think working with your student's personality, and I think holding them to your particular family standard, as far as communication goes. We talk about communicating, nonverbal communication. What your t-shirt says matters. Your facial expression matters. Are you preparing the student to go to college, or do you know that college is not something that's going to happen and you're preparing them for the workforce? Those are two very different types of communication you're preparing them for. So my students who I know are not doing college, when it comes to teaching them how to cite sources and things like that in their language, I want them to be introduced to that. But I'm not going to have them learn it all, and I'm not going to hold them to every comma and period that is needed for a proper citation. So a student who is going to be going to college, I'm going to be a little bit more on top of those things. So I think it's very, very individual, and you need to know your student. And that's why homeschooling in high school is such a beautiful thing, because they're not going to get that in a big classroom full of other students, where they're going to be based on, the direction that the parents sees their life going and they want their life to go. They're going to be just thrown in with everybody and expected to learn what everybody else is learning. So I think knowing your student is really important.
So, and when you say that, it just kind of reminded me that, like, when we get into the high school years, it's like we become guidance counselor as well. So
Yeah.
it's so important to be reliant on, like, the Holy Spirit to say, like, Lord, what are their gifts? What are their talents? What is your plan for them? Help me to, like, know how to guide them and rely on the Spirit for that. But then I love that, like you said, we can kind of customize a plan for them. So then I have to ask a controversial question to both of you, and that is, if we get so many questions about, well, I know my kid's not going to college, and then there's always the parent that's like, but I just want them to cover everything in case they decide later. So in your opinion, what is the highest, like, language level that they should have or work towards? And then what about math? Is algebra 2 necessary, and should we still make them do it even if they don't know they're going to college? So I guess we could start with Kate and then bounce back to Sarah.
Well, I would say, first of all, every child's different. I'm not going to say it's necessary for every single child out there. I think it does have a benefit in that when you go through the principles of Algebra 2, they're getting to see how math really does describe God's creation in a much deeper way than they would in just their physics course, for example, or their regular, their Algebra 1 course. So it's definitely building good skills into them. Whether it's absolutely necessary or not, I think is an individual choice. You would want to look at what your state requires and whether you want them to have that under their belt or not. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
I think so, because one of the questions we get is, like, if I had to choose between consumer math or algebra 2 to get that third or fourth math just so that they're college ready, which one should I do? And like you said, it's kind of hard to navigate that because it is based on the child or what the college they might go to or the profession they might choose. But I think that being the author, some people would want to know, like, hey, what do you think is best? So do you have tips, or is it just so individualized that it's best to just kind of pray about it? And
my gut says it's individualized. I really feel like there are some children that really struggle with algebra to begin with, and you've been tearing your hair out just to get through algebra 1. Algebra 2 might not be as beneficial to them as consumer math would be. You've got other children that are gifted in math and that comes more easily to, and algebra 2 might be good for them to have in their back pocket before they bounce out. So it's kind of, I do feel like it's an individual thing for parents to pray through. And I guess my encouragement would be, if there's so much weight of, like, trying to get the child to learn everything. And I just want to encourage moms, you're not going to. They are going to learn things after they graduate. After I graduated, I learned a ton, but my mom had given me the skills to know how to learn and to know who to run to when I didn't know what to do, because in real life, we don't, right? But if we know to run to God, that's what teaches us more than anything else, forwards and backwards. And actually, my mom didn't make me do calculus when I was in high school. And then when God called me to write about math, I had my brother tutor me through calculus. But that was okay. I mean, I could learn after I had already graduated, right? And I was more eager to learn because I knew I needed to use it. And so don't don't worry about like, I've got to get everything covered. They can still learn after you give them their diploma.
And Sarah?
Yes, I'm going to agree with that, Kate, because I have a son who he ended up doing dual enrollment for 11th and 12th grade. So his math and his language were through a local community college. And so I had only gotten him through 10th grade in English, yet he was pulling 3 days in these college courses. And you know what I realized is like they are teaching him how to write a bibliography. He didn't have to have it nailed down in 10th grade before he started this dual enrollment. So like you said, they're going to be learning when they're in these entry level college courses. The instructors are going to teach them what they need to know to complete the course. So it is not all on us. Not to mention, we all know, because we don't remember everything we learned in high school. We know that they're not going to retain every single thing that they're taught. But like you said, the life skills of showing up to class on time, working hard, getting your assignments in on time, communicating with your instructors if you have questions. These are the things that are going to make a successful college student, not how much information they have crammed and retained. So I would agree with that point.
I'm glad that you brought up time management. So oftentimes either homeschoolers are great or horrible at time management. So and I know that even varies within a family. Like my daughters can be on time no matter what. My sons can be on time when they care. So I mean, so it really could be all over the place. And I joke because I'm Puerto Rican, so we're always on island time. So like, how do you foster time management, and why is it so crucial in these particular in this stage?
So yeah, I mean, I have boys that I am pulling them out of bed at 8:30 in the morning. We do a morning meeting time, basket time together, and yeah, getting them out of bed sometimes. And so my husband will be like, they might have to get up at 6 for work someday, and we need to get them on a schedule. And you know what I've discovered in the 2 that I've graduated is that character to me is a little bit different than a time management skill. You might be a person of great character, but your time management is a little off, right? You see the big picture and not the details, like minutes, right? So, but if we can produce students who have good character, that time management stuff will eventually adjust. It will work itself out because they want to please their employer and they want to do what's right. And so if they have to get up at 6, even though they're used to getting up at 8:30, they will get up at 6. They don't want to lose their jobs. And let's face it, sometimes kids, when it's mom trying to get them out of bed, it's a little bit different than when it's an employer wanting them to get out of bed and get to work on time. And there are big time adult repercussions, right, for not showing up to work on time or not getting to a college class on time. So I see that as a character issue, and I'm not too worried about them sleeping till 8:30. I know that when it comes down to it, they will get up on time and they'll be to work on time.
So I have a question about how you would build your 4-year plan. Do you have any like tips that would help a mom in sketching a plan and giving direction to have peace of mind?
You want to answer, Kate, or do you want me? I have an answer.
I have a couple thoughts, and then I'm sure you have a lot more, but I would just encourage them to think about what they're planning to do next. Like if they are planning to go to a college and they know that, look at what the college requires for their math, and that will help you guide what to pick and what not to. Look at your state requirements. Some states have specific math courses that are required in high school, so you would want to look into that. And just to let parents know, consumer math, you could count it as personal finance if you needed to, if that's one of the requirements in your state. And I would just encourage parents to be careful about overbooking. I feel like there's this tendency to try to sign up for everything under the sun. And I am just so thankful, as a homeschool graduate, that my mom didn't overbook our schedule, because that's what allowed us the time to really explore those things that were of interest to us and develop the skills that we really needed. And so just be cautious about trying to have this weight on you of like, I've got to cover all of this and sign them up for all of these things. Like, you're missing everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else, even if that's time for them to explore those things of interest.
I would say that having peace of mind, I jotted down, our peace of mind comes from who we know and who we are depending on, and that is the Lord. And so it doesn't come from our own plans that we've laid out. It doesn't come from a spreadsheet. It doesn't come from, getting professional advice. Like, you will have peace in your heart knowing that you are steering your child in the direction that the Lord is directing. So I think that's where the peace comes from. Now, knowing your state laws is important, but also not being confined by them, but working along with them. So, for instance, I have a son who's extremely interested in flying drones. He makes gliders out of foam. He spends all of his time learning how to fly, whatever he can fly. And so I just created an elective course for him based on that. And he's got a drone, he's got a little program, he's read books on drones. And so that's just kind of steering him in this direction of something that he absolutely loves. I think also just really focusing that 4-year plan on building it around your students' interests, their talents. And sometimes the hardest thing with that, I've had kids that you just know, I mean, from 7 years old, this child has been interested in this. Other kids, it's just, I don't know what they're I don't know. When I ask them what they want to be, they have no idea. That's where I think exposing them to different types of careers is a great idea. If you have a friend who is an architect and you say, could my 16-year-old just kind of shadow you for a day? I could come with and kind of watch. And it's those opportunities that we can present to our kids, and we never know what might just kind of light a fire of interest. There's different videos you could find to show what is a day in this career like. Sometimes we mention a career to a student, but they have no idea, what does that person do on a daily basis? And sometimes just giving them that information can cause them to become interested in something. Also asking friends who have had experience. Graduating students have experience putting together a 4-year plan that brought them some peace. Talk to people that you know who have graduated students or have high school students. If you feel intimidated, sometimes just having a great conversation with a good friend can just put your mind at ease and can make you excited about planning out 4 years worth of curriculum instead of scared of it.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I would add to what you guys said, because I totally agree, those are so encouraging, is the plan can change, and that's okay. like your 9th grade year, by the time they're in 11th grade, it's like you're treading along, and then you might be like, oh, well, now, they're interested in this, or this might be a great opportunity. And I just want to echo what you said about different careers and shadowing and apprenticeships. Or we did for 3 years in our community, I led a high school and middle school career field trips, and we went to the Supreme Court, we talked to missionaries, we went to accounting offices, like we did all of it to kind of, we went to the hospital and talked to an endocrinologist just to get an idea of what is out there, what is required. And and it's interesting because we did one at a dentist's office, and one young lady who thought she was going to go into cosmetology totally changed that, but still had that art side of it, and thought, well, now I can put it towards teeth. And so it's really neat. She never would have thought about it if she hadn't, went and had those experiences. So I agree that that's, and the communities are so willing to have you come. So that's great. I just had a couple of questions that tend to be like our top questions. And before we get into some encouragement for mom and the students, and that is, when do you know when to persevere and when to quit? Because I know that takes a lot of discernment, but that is a question which can go back to character. But how would you say you would discern that in a student?
Boy, only the Holy Spirit sometimes. Because sometimes I don't know. Yeah, you want to challenge them, and you don't want to teach them, well, when it gets hard, you just quit. An example I have, one of my students loves reading, absolutely will chew through books. He will stay up till 4 a.m. finishing a book. I'll get a text, Mom, please let me sleep in. I didn't finish till 4. Loves reading. So if he gets 3-4 chapters into a book and he is just complaining about how awful it is, I say, you know what, buddy, put it down. Because I know that you are a good reader and I know that you love reading. So if this book is not it for you, then we can shelve it and we can find something else. So sometimes it's just knowing your child's abilities and interests well enough to judge whether this is something they need to push on through or it's something it's okay to shelve. That consumer math course that I talked about earlier with my older son, he was not going to go into anything with mathematics, and this was not focused on life skills or biblical worldview. It was just all this math that was, I felt, really excessive and things that he didn't need to know. And I decided halfway through the year to pull that, and I do not regret it. I'm really glad I pulled it. He was able to focus on what his interests and talents are. And directly out of high school, he was offered a job at the Christian radio station, and he currently now has his own radio show in the afternoon. So I get to listen to my son every afternoon on Christian radio. So that's really fun. So it's really the student asking the Lord, pushing to a certain point, but then realizing when it's doing more damage than it is good to continue to push them.
So you mentioned some literature there, like how will language lessons 11 and 12 be structured? Could we pick our own language, like literature aspect of it? So can you kind of give us a sneak peek on what's coming?
Yes, level 11, hopefully going to the printer in about 2 weeks. We're working on some final edits there. Level 11 actually takes a little bit of a different turn with the writing aspect, and I focus on logic and writing because one of my sons took the logic course that Masterbooks has, and it greatly affected his writing and thinking skills. And I thought, you know what, when it comes to writing, you could write a report or an essay that is grammatically perfect, but if it's not logically sound, then what good is it, right? I think a lot of professors would rather see original thought, logical presentation, as opposed to perfect grammar. So I teach that in level 11. I also have a lot of literature excerpts from folk tales, poetry, and they all focus on character traits in literature. So that's kind of fun. There's not a companion book for level 11. All the excerpts are contained within the course. They learn to do a book review, and there's several different essays. But yes, they will be picking. We'll have the same form we do in the back matter of the book, where the parent and student will choose the literature that the student will read for the year, and then they are reminded weekly about keeping up on their reading chart. And so there's a little spot for them to rate their books, because I put that in there because my boys always love that. When I have them read a book, they get to rate it 0 to 10 and tell me why they would recommend it or not recommend it. Level 12 will have the same thing, independent reading list in the back. We're working on establishing the companion book. There will be a companion book for level 12. I know we've said in the past that there wasn't going to be, but I had a really, really great idea that I'm falling in love with, and so it is going to have a companion book. Level 12 will focus on writing skills, more life skill type things like writing a resume, even filling out a job application, and how a job application and how you fill it out really it can present well or not well. You don't want to hand in a job application with coffee stains on it, all wrinkled up, things like that. You just need to realize that their presentation matters.
So how would you balance out working in high school and schoolwork? What do you prioritize? How do you prioritize it? Because it can go either way. And I've seen that. So how has been y'all's experience?
Well, I know my brother apprenticed as an electrician during high school, but he was able, while doing that, to still get the work that he needed done. So I think it's very individual for each child as far as what they can handle and what's something to pray through. I don't know, Sarah, do you have more specific guidance?
Yeah, I mean, my oldest, we got him hooked up with this radio station when he was about 16. So he went out there every other Monday, which took all day. as an intern and worked on developing his skills to the point where they hired him immediately from high school graduation. So I guess it would depend on the job. If the job is really something that is geared toward the career the student wants to go into, by all means, right? To me, that was school. It wasn't work versus school. The work was school for him. So I guess it depends on the job, but certainly, they've got their whole life to earn money. They're going to spend the rest of their life working. So if it's not a job that is, getting them skills toward their future career, then I would say prioritize schoolwork or the job.
Right. I totally agree with that. Because I've seen some kids that will start off at Chick-fil-A and then all of a sudden their whole schedule is Chick-fil-A and then it's not any school getting done, or they're rushing at the end or something. So let's talk a little bit about technology accountability. Why do you think that's important at this stage, and how do we learn to let them let go, but also, kind of be a guide still?
We're kind of going through this right now. Actually, yesterday I bought a port charger thing, and I put it in the hallway between all the bedrooms. And everyone needs to charge their device in one spot, and they all have certain times of the evening where, according to their age, the device is put in that port until the next morning. So I think every family, we all have different ways of dealing with technology. Some families are much more loose. Some families are extremely rigid and don't allow any technology. So it really is your own personal conviction of how you're going to deal with that. But I will tell you that it's much easier to say no to start with than it is to pull something away after your student has had access to it. So my advice would be, and I've made mistakes in this area, is to be more rigid about it, more conservative about it than you think you need to be. That's a much easier path to go down than being too liberal and having to pull back. It will take away from their focus on school when they've got access to a cell phone and friends are texting them while they're trying to do their math. This has not worked well for my family, and so we are pulling back on those things.
So I did want to ask you guys about something that I'm personally struggling with, and that's senioritis. So how do you combat that? Both whether it's like they start off really strong and then all of a sudden they're like, I'm good, I'm done, I don't know, I just want to have fun. So how do you deal with that?
I think you got to give them a pep talk about finishing strong. That's all you can do. I had this with my son, who is doing online university right now, and he would get to the point where he was like, I don't need to do this last project. I'm going to pass without it, and then not do the last project. I'm like, you could have had an A, and now you have a B, because he just got to this point where I passed. So I'm like, no, we are not doing that. Mm-mm. So we've had some pep talks, and it's going to be different for the next semester of college. So yeah, I think just encouraging them with God's word. Our students have been raised to believe that this is the word of God. This is truth. This is what is going to guide my life. Then we turn to God's word and we say, look, like everything that your hands find to do it as unto the Lord. Are you not going to cross that finish line? Are you going to just stroll across it, not paying attention? No, let's please the Lord in everything that we do and set an example for those, younger siblings that we have or friends that we have. Let's do our very best as unto him.
And if I can add, I think sometimes what was helpful for my brother and I was by that age, we were looking at what we were going to do next, right? And so we wanted to get what needed done for that. And we were part of planning what our college or what our high school looked like. So we had a say into what we were studying. And so that was of interest to us or of necessity for us to do what we were going to do next. For my brother, he realized in high school that he'd better actually try to learn if he was going to provide for a family one day, because after apprenticing as an electrician, he realized he didn't like hot attics. So he's like, okay, I better figure out how to get a degree and do a different route for my career here. And that means I had better actually learn how to write and learn how to do math and learn how to. He was the reluctant student who didn't do anything until he was 16, and then all of a sudden it was like, ooh, I got to catch up everything. So he was motivated because he had done that apprenticeship and because he had seen this is not how I want to live the rest of my life. And for me, by the time I had gotten to be a senior, I had already completed a lot of my requirements. So I was allowed to just pick things that were of interest to me to do for my senior year. And so I wanted to finish it because it was interesting to me. So that would just be a couple other thoughts.
So would you recommend that as kind of like a motivator? Let's do our meat and potatoes as much as we can earlier on, so our senior year is a little bit more free and customized to your own interests?
Well, I think it depends on the student. I mean, there are students who just don't want to learn and or have legitimate struggles learning the material, and so they need that whole time, and you can't really do that with them. But there's others that learn quickly, and yeah, you could try to encourage them to get it done faster. I think that's the beauty of homeschooling is you can work with your child. I mean, we were never quote unquote on grade level because we were wherever we needed to be, right, for the different subjects. And so that's perfectly fine to kind of customize that based on your child.
Could you kind of lean in a little bit more on that? Because that is an area where some parents get very discouraged that like their kid might not be totally on grade level, and or maybe they're in science and history, they're great. It doesn't matter. They're on grade level, but something happens in the upper grades where that panic kind of sets in, and it's like, oh, but they're not where they are. So how could you encourage a parent to teach the child and not so much worry about teaching the curriculum?
I think a lot of it goes into our own personal growth. I'm discovering as the mom now looking down, it's like there's so much tied to we want to be a good mom and we want to have our child succeed, and we're taking on all this stuff that really isn't ours to carry. They're God's child, right? God knit them together the way he did for the good works that he's ordained for them. And we don't have to carry the burden of having it match what some kind of average decided was the best thing for them to learn. Like everybody is wired so differently and learns so differently. But I think it goes to us surrendering our own goals and desires before the Lord and realizing, is our goal really that we want them to know and love him and that we want them to be all that he created them to be? Or is our goal that they meet some kind of external standards so that validates us and makes us look good, right? And we wouldn't really say it that way, but like deep down, I'm finding as a mom, like I have to constantly go back to surrendering my desires and my goals. And like I wanted my son to learn to read right away. We were going to learn to read, and then he was going to be able to work independently, and that was going to be great. And I had a student who just couldn't learn to read right away, and I had to surrender all this stuff, right? And so I think it's the same thing as you get towards the end. First of all, recognize when they graduate, that's not the end. They're going to still be able to keep learning, and let the burden of all that go. They're God's child.
Yeah, totally agree, Kate. We can make it about ourselves, right? Because it's kind of embarrassing when our student is 3 grade levels below our friend's student in the same subject. And we can feel like a failure, or, some of us, I don't have to deal with this, thank goodness, but some of us are dealing with, friends and family who think we're ruining our children and we're not, they're not going to have a good education. And so we have this pressure on ourselves that, we can feel like a failure. And that's such a mistake to make it about ourselves and to drive our children based on our needs instead of their needs. So it really does take the Lord doing that heart work in us to say, I need to be concerned about what you want first, Lord, and then this student's needs. Please help this not be about my needs.
So going off of that, do you guys feel that a gap year or a super senior year is appropriate and could be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't had that experience with my sons, but I know some students who have. Sometimes a student just needs more of a chance to mature and to begin to hear from God and feel a strong pull in one way or another. And it can be such a mistake to push them off into college or push them into some career that they're not ready for. or they don't want to do. And so, each, like we've talked, each child is so individual, and we as homeschool moms really, we know our kids inside and out sometimes, right? And so I think it's definitely appropriate at times.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, when I graduated, my mom handed me a diploma and said, "Here, now you can keep learning." I mean, you're not, again, we just because somebody says you school for 18 years and then you're good, like your child might be able to finish sooner or later. I mean, like we're all unique individuals.
Hmm.
Kate, do you feel like you have more confidence in homeschooling because you were homeschooled, or is that a misconception on most people's part?
I feel like there are a lot of things that are easier for me because I watched my mom do it, such as like modifying a curriculum and not viewing it as like you have to do whatever the curriculum says, and being a little bit more relaxed about some of the getting it all done and all that. But at the same time, I'm finding myself having to go through some of the same growth inside that I watched my mom go through. Like I watched her go from being really worried about us getting everything done and being emphasizing the academics and to okay, what really matters is we're following God and we're building your character, and that was the switch she had to go through. And then when I started homeschooling, it's like all of a sudden I have that burden on my on my back that I had to work on letting go of. So yes, it's been easier in some ways, but then there's other parts of the journey that we all go through, I think.
So, as we wrap up, do you guys have a top three course that you're like, I definitely want my students to do this with master books before they graduate with having the end in mind? And it's totally okay to say your course.
Like I said earlier, I really think that logic course, even though some choose to use it for as low as seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, is an excellent one. Like I said, I'm looking forward to the consumer math because that's just such it's practical and godly. When as many biblical concepts with math and life skills is super important, and of course, every level of high school language lessons.
I just wanted to ask you guys, what is your most impactful or favorite memory that you have in homeschooling high school and then having the high school homeschool experience?
I was going to say, honestly, I mean, all the curriculum is wonderful and we've had a great experience with it, but it's our morning time together has been fantastic with my high school students. That morning basket time, usually we're reading maybe a spiritual growth type of a book. We read the scripture together. We go over activities for the day. We talk about our schedule for the next week. And so it's those types of experiences, I think, where we're just being a family together, and keeping the lines of communication open with your high school student, working with them about with the things that they're interested in, and we're constantly saying, how can we support you in this? Do a little bit of research, find out how you can advance your knowledge in this particular area. So it's been more, not so much the curriculum, but that personal one-on-one time that you get with your students, like in God's word and talking about the direction for their lives, that has been the most impactful part of high school.
I would say for me, it was being able to explore different interests. Although there's one particular story that stands out that I'll just share because I think it will encourage moms. We had been doing chemistry and we were stirring. I don't know what we were learning about. All I remember is that my mom decided to use a metal spoon because the glass thing we were supposed to stir it with was in the house and we were in the garage. And she picks up this metal spoon and half of it burns away because the chemical burnt it. You weren't supposed to use a metal spoon, but I remember that more than I remember anything else in chemistry. And that was everything gone wrong. So I would encourage parents, like, it's not necessarily the things you get right that your children are going to remember or that's really going to help them. Like that gave me a very healthy fear of chemicals and knowledge that they really are powerful. So.
Yes, I've always enjoyed our Bible time, worldview time. I love seeing them persevere. My daughter used to call math until she did math, principles of mathematics. She used to call it math stands for mental abuse to humans. And so now we did Palm 1 and 2, and her attitude changed, so that was great. And now what's really funny is that she does accounting. And so I think that's so funny. But I love being there for those growth moments and seeing their worldview and having those discussions. And then I love just the fact that you are basically creating humans who can be your best friends. Like, they really can be your friends and have fellowship. And it's just neat to see their plans and what the Lord plans to do for them in their lives and how they're going to use their gifts for his glory. And that's an encouraging and humbling thing to do, and to know that we gave some of our best efforts and best years to a work and a high calling, and it just doesn't stop in the elementary years or middle school years. This is where you reap the harvest, and you get to see the birth of a whole new season of who they're going to be and how they're going to be world changers. And so to me, that's been the best part of homeschooling through high school. And I love the memories because I have messed up so many experiments. So that's why we love the Masterbooks Academy, because then I know we're going to get it right. But in closing, do you guys have any encouragement for the mom who might feel intimidated or unsure about homeschooling through high school and using Masterbooks for that?
I would say, Masterbooks has so many supports. There's the Facebook page, and there's the app, and there's the academy, and there are sessions like this one to watch. So they offer so many different ways that you can reach out and get support. Jump on, ask a question. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to reach out to other homeschool mothers that just for encouragement and for advice. Don't buy the lie that you're not smart enough to do this, because you absolutely are smart enough to do this, right? It's the curriculum. It's Masterbooks curriculum is written to the student. So you aren't the teacher, right? You are learning alongside them. You're growing with them. You are getting them the help and support that they need. You are their guider, right? Their supervisor. But you don't have to know everything about high school to be able to lead a high school student through these high school years. So don't make yourself too important. It isn't about you. God will equip you in ways that you could never imagine. He will send friends at a moment when you need them. A friend from church who's amazing at math, even though you aren't, who might be able to come over and sit down with you and your child and help work through something. So reach out for help, trust in the Lord, and believe that you can do this.
And I would encourage you that that God makes a good teacher, and that you, especially in math, I think a lot of parents were taught in a way that's just like fact, 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 and so they didn't understand high school math. And when you see it in connection with God's creation, when you understand the purpose, it makes so much more sense. I mean, imagine if you were trying to teach your child to drive from a textbook for 8 years without ever letting them go drive, right? They'd think they hated driving, but they would never have really driven. And that's why a lot of people have a fear of math, because they've just been taught it completely devoid of its application and completely devoid of really its purpose and its life. But the Masterbooks math really puts that back together again. So you're going to get to see math in a different way than you might have experienced it when you were in high school. So it doesn't have to be something to be afraid of. And in the Masterbooks Academy, I give students the ability to email me with questions. So know that you'll have access to ask me questions if you do get stumped along the way. I really want to make sure that you succeed and enjoy that experience.
And that would be my encouragement as well, is just keep at it, keep working, and enjoying the journey with your child. And Masterbooks has made it so easy, both in all the subjects, but especially math and in English, where they want you to be able to communicate well and to understand and to go on into the higher STEM careers, and we have had great success using Kate's math, and we loved how she taught Jacob's algebra. I don't think I would have gone through it without her. I watched the videos before my kid did the lesson, and I'm so thankful that language lessons will be going to 11 and 12. I'm excited for that's the next level for one of my students, and we have enjoyed language lessons 10, which they learn about biography versus an autobiography, and they get to read about George Washington and develop good character and kind of analyze some of his characters. So I highly recommend you guys check it out. I want to thank Kate and Sarah for being here with me today and for all of your wisdom, and just for the accessibility as Masterbooks user that we have to you as authors. We appreciate your hard work. We thank you so much, and I hope that you have been blessed by this session and that you will continue to enjoy the summit, and thank you for being with us today.